If the best measure of success of any garden design is how well it matches the needs and the dreams and the resources of the owner, then how do you even begin to design effectively for a client who has no knowledge of gardening, zero time and a baby on the way, a really limited budget, but absolutely heaps and heaps of land? Nestled into a towering woodland on the New South Wales Central Coast is an expansive property purchased by Philip and Maria Vasali as a weekend retreat. As busy Sydney restaurateurs, they saw potential in the tranquil bushland plot. With an abundance of wildlife and a magically beautiful private lake, it's an idyllic escape. Hey, Maria.
Hi, Michael.
Hey, Philip.
Michael, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you for coming.
And what a spot you got here.
It is.
It's fantastic. I love the way it just kind of hugs you. It's the most beautiful, like, clearing in a forest. It's fabulous.
Spectacular. The place has a little bit of history for myself. My family, we lived in the house when I was 6 years old, and a friend of ours who's an agent up here kind of called one day and said, "Oh, do you remember that house that you lived in? It's for sale." So when we came up and had a look at the place, it was kind of like the memories started to come back.
And they were happy memories, obviously?
They were.
Yeah.
They were great memories. It was quite magical.
And what is it about the feel of the place that you loved?
Look, it's very private. I think that coming off the road, you'd never know that the house was here. It'll be a great weekender and a great place for us to come as a family.
Philip's childhood connection to the house hasn't stopped him undertaking major renovations, and so far costs are over $1 million and climbing, which has left Philip and Maria wrestling with what to do with the garden. So I believe there's already been quite a few changes to this plan. What's been going on there?
It's that dirty word, budget.
Budget.
Yeah, basically, yeah, we've had a budget overblow, and so we've had to kind of go back to the drawing board and start again. Working on such a large scale like this where we kind of underestimated what the cost potentially would be.
The figure they've settled on for the garden is $100,000. It would be a sizable amount for a suburban backyard. But how far will it go in reimagining this 1 acre plot?
I think it's giving something to someone that knows what they're doing about and kind of allowing them the freedom to be able to produce something that hopefully that we'll fall in love with.
So are you gardeners at all?
No, not at all.
No.
But a green thumb,
No.
Right.
Not at all, not at all. We're probably the only ones who can kill an indoor plant.
Right.
You know, the space has to be kind of low maintenance and, you know, and functional. And something that, you know, the furthest from a green thumb person can, you know, manage.
Another challenge is getting the garden finished in time for an important event. We have a deadline, don't we?
Yes, we're expecting our first child, so we have 10 weeks to go, yeah, until the family begins.
And it's all going to be done by then?
Well, we'd like to think so,
Fingers
but,
crossed.
you know what I mean, we'll see how we go.
The design takes its lead from the stone facade of the house and draws that out into the landscape. Two intricately assembled sandstone walls of curiously unequal length just imply a sense of enclosure, and lawn steps with weathered steel risers drop down into this space of decomposed granite and gravel. Ornamental grasses and lawn extend both sides. It's contemporary, but deliberately understated. Closer to the house will be two smaller sandstone courtyards. The pool, which is part of the house-built budget, will have an impressive black glass bead finish. It's a big job on a limited budget with a very ambitious timeline. Philip and Maria have a deadline of 10 weeks. I just can't see how it's ever going to happen. And there's just so much that can go wrong between here and that 10-week deadline period. Well, it's going to take half of that probably to get started. The starting gun has been fired. Landscape designer Christopher Owen has arrived on site. I'm keen to hear his views on the tightness of the budget.
Philip sent quite a succinct email once we got that plan costed. And I'm thinking $100,000 at this scale. $100,000 is a suburban budget.
Entry level,
you know?
yeah.
And so I kind of meagerly put an extra 50 on top of that for Philip, and he nearly had a heart attack. So I thought, oh gosh, you know, here I am. I'm strapped to this $150,000 budget.
The garden needs to nestle seamlessly into the surrounds, and Christopher's preferred solution is subtle and restrained. This may also help to keep the costs down.
Baby's on the way, and we've got sort of a tight time constraint. What do you see about the site? Do you see any hiccups in construction?
There's every chance where there will be a problem. It's a higher than average rainfall, and the soil here is quite heavy, so fingers crossed we don't get too much rain.
Landscaper Simon Head is ready to tackle the 10-week deadline.
The plan of attack is excavate down to our required levels in the courtyard.
Well, we've started work, but I still don't have a firm budget on this round of work. So hopefully it comes in around the budget.
Simon is confident the job will be done well before Bub arrives.
Hopefully 5 to 6 weeks, give or take, depending on weather, obviously. But it's a pretty straightforward job, you know, going all good.
Six weeks later, and the project looks like a mud bath. With winter storms lashing the area, Simon has had to drain the lake to prevent flooding. This space is enclosed by bushland, and right now, this is working against him.
This site here probably gets about 3-4 hours sunlight a day. So that's why it's in the condition, it's not drying out real quick.
So Maria's baby is fast approaching. How does that work for you?
Obviously, we'd like to have it finished, but due to the conditions, it's probably not going to happen.
The delay won't just affect Philip and Maria.
We can't work. So obviously that's a cost as far as labour goes. So each day that it rains and the boys can't work, well, it's out of my pocket.
At their Sydney restaurant, Philip and Maria have one eye on the number of diners
How many bookings do you have tonight?
About 110.
110.
and one eye on the weather.
Yeah, Mother Nature. She's working against us, so it's something that is incredibly frustrating. But, you know what I mean, I can't blame the landscaper. It's not his fault. He can't control the rain.
3 months in, the rains have eased, for now at least, and the stonework for the courtyard walls is underway. It's a precise Tetris-like process. One oddly shaped or poorly placed piece will jar. Each block is being cut individually for an exacting finish.
It's a lot of work, but it looks great in the end.
Christopher Owen is back to check on progress.
There's not enough done. That was my first thought. How long is this going to take? I feel like, yeah, we're really behind schedule for Philip and Maria.
He's right. There's now a living, breathing reminder of the original deadline.
Come to see your little holiday house? Oh, this is Luciano?
Yeah,
He's-
4.5, 5 weeks old now. So, first day up on site to inspect the job. Yeah, a lot of stone. I didn't realise there's so much stone. Wow.
They don't appear overly impressed, but Christopher has a solution that will soften the stone.
As we had it before, there was very little planting, so it was about the physical landscape. But because you won't let me spend any money,
Yep.
we've pulled...
Or so much money.
Yeah, maybe. I pulled all of that out, basically.
Yeah.
Christopher's low-cost solution is to add greenery in the shape of 2 grass species.
It's going to be the generous gesture and make it beautiful. There will be an extra degree of maintenance, but we can figure that out.
Okay.
Very good.
None of that's on paper.
No.
It's all still exactly right.
It was supposed to be finished before the baby, you know what I mean? But the baby was supposed to come after everything, and the baby was supposed to be enjoying his quiet time
First
here.
6 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, so that obviously hasn't happened, but we're kind of talking 6 weeks away, you know, weather pending, fingers crossed.
Right, some more than this side, mate.
While Philip and Maria are desperate to get their garden finished, it can take years for a design to mature. Keen to see another garden based on modesty and restraint, I headed to the spectacular Kangaroo Valley, 2 hours south of Sydney. It's where landscape designer Hugh Main has been inspired by the timeless, understated quality of Japanese Zen gardens.
So Hugh, this garden looks incredibly impressive upon arrival, incredibly mature. How long's it been here?
I first walked on site in about 2003.
Now, how long was it before you started to see it look the way you had imagined?
Probably a couple of years, especially the amoeba garden. You know, when we first put it in, that would just look like hair plugs. And then trying to tell the client, OK, no, this will become the amoeba garden with some sort of confidence and them believing you, did take a couple of years.
Vision and patience are important keys to the process, and Philip and Maria will need both to see their garden reach its full potential.
If you look at that mountain, it's got this beautiful undulating form, and that's the shape that we're clipping the amoeba garden into. This garden we're looking down on, we're calling the lake garden. The important thing is that this links to the horizon. The beautiful trees you see in the horizon are spotted gum, so that's what we've planted here. So in time, there'll be hopefully this link between this garden and the whole landscape.
The large scale of the garden has allowed Hugh to play, to experiment, and to evolve his vision.
Oh, look, this garden's very special to me in that it gave me the rare luxury of exploring lots of different ideas on the one site, which is such a beautiful experience to have had.
The planting here is fantastically simple and restrained.
There's not a lot of flowers, there's not a lot of colours, it's all about greenery, it's all about plant form.
The question is, can Christopher achieve the same successful outcome in Philip and Maria's garden?
There are all sorts of parallels, I think, in their outlook. It's going to be really interesting to see the way his quietness, his subtlety emerges on that site.
Back on the Central Coast, the builders moved up a gear. Simon has begun welding the weathering steel steps. The lake is being refilled with bore water, and road base is arriving to begin the courtyard surfacing.
You got 6 ton, haven't you?
Yeah, 6 tons of good stuff.
Today, Philip and Maria are due to check in. Will they notice the changes?
I hope so. Obviously, the walls weren't constructed. This is the main structural part of the design, so hopefully that'll really impact on them.
With their expensive house renovation dragging on, the pressure for the garden to stay on budget and on schedule is constant.
Doesn't seem like a lot's been done, does it?
No. The sandstone wall's gone up.
Yeah. Still a long way to go. Feels like forever. The whole process feels like it's been a long time. The house and the landscape.
Every time I come up here, it's a matter of weeks, and then it's more weeks, and there's more weeks on top of that. So hopefully before Christmas, because we do intend to use it during that time. But oh yes, it will be. Yes, we will have Christmas here.
How are we?
Hi, how are you?
Good. Hello, how are you?
Simon?
Growing up a bit.
He has.
Yeah, very
He
quick.
has.
So how are we going?
Yeah, good. Stone walls are finished.
So when do we start actually seeing kind of
Some greenery.
greenery? Yeah.
Greenery will be last, unfortunately, but yeah,
So how long are we looking?
a few weeks yet.
Does that mean the budget's changed?
No, not really.
Not really.
So we will be finished before Christmas, yeah?
Yeah, I hope so.
Okay.
The labour required here is highly skilled and incredibly detailed. To the untrained eye, it can be hard to see where both time and money are being spent.
Everything's expensive. Nothing's cheap. Nothing's cheap. Look, it's okay. You know, they're still within, it sounds like, within the budget. So, yeah. It just feels still now very unfinished. You know, once the gravel goes in and we start to see some lawn and planting, you know, it should come together. Fingers crossed.
With little to review, Philip and Maria head back to the city. Designer Christopher Owen narrowly escapes interrogation.
It's tough. It's tough. It's tough trying to finesse, I think, work and design and detail things the way you want them and stay within a budget line. Philip's only question is how is the budget? That's about it. Stretched is the answer.
So how much of the $150,000 have they spent?
To be honest, I know we've probably spent... How much money have we spent?
So far?
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't have a clue.
See, if he doesn't have a clue, you're asking the wrong person here.
30,000 on stone walls?
But they're beautiful, right?
Five months in and the gravel is arriving in truckloads. The weathered steel edging is almost complete and the fire pit is in position.
See that was a Virgo thing.
There's plenty of greenery arriving.
Doesn't matter which one we start with. Oh, maybe the top one. So,
1,200 grasses will add an instant impact to what has been until now a building site.
it feels good to get some plants in the ground. It's a long time, but once these are in the ground and a bit of mulch, it'll start looking amazing.
Christopher is panicking about the cost.
I think we're over budget. I think we must be around 200, but that's just a guess.
A possible $50,000 overspend is a big concern, but not entirely surprising for a job that's months overdue and with an evolving planting scheme.
The original idea was to have quite high planting up against these walls, and that's all gone now and been reduced back to lawn. What's really emerged now is this strong, repetitive theme of rectangles, and rectangles within rectangles. I love this idea of dreaming up a theme and then repeating it over and over again. I've got straight lines forming here.
The grasses of differing heights will be planted in a pattern that will achieve cloud-like formations.
What I'm really loving about this planting is that Christopher's chosen to use one texture throughout the whole bed, but he's using two different species. This one here is a miscanthus, which will grow quite tall. This is a pennisetum, which grows substantially smaller. So the effect will be of this kind of undulating form of the wind blowing through different heights. But it's a typical restrained decision on behalf of Christopher. It's a lovely understatement that he does so beautifully.
Will Philip and Maria appreciate the subtleties of Christopher's design?
The big question for them was, how am I going to use that space? Right. You know, why would I come out here? That's the best question, I could be asked.
Yeah, true.
So for him, it's just about how do we make this kind of function work? And then the overlay is, of course, it's a given. It's got to be beautiful.
And so does the budget continue to be a restriction too?
We've worked to a suburban budget here in a semi-rural setting. It's gone to the point where they just want to see it done well. And if that means spending a few $1,000s on some trees, then I'm just going to do it and get yelled at later. Yeah.
And Christopher isn't mincing his words. $5,000 worth of unplanned pear trees are making their way up the driveway.
Oh, they look fantastic.
Two trees will be placed at the front and 3 to the rear of the courtyard.
It's sitting all right now.
Looks pretty good. Actually, that's the flat side. Can we spin it 90 degrees? Yep, that's pretty good.
I love the understatedness of this design, that almost everything is just implied. It's not overstated, it's just suggested. At every point, there's a suggestion of enclosure. There's just a suggestion of spatial division. And that's really, really clever. Philip and Maria have kind of kept their distance during this process. At what point do you think they're really going to engage with what you've done?
Landscape's an interesting process like that because there's a lot of mess and then one day there's not. I think when that turf goes down and the courtyards have got gravel on them, and it'll lock everything together and it'll make sense for them.
Right.
And that'll be the moment. So the very end.
Yeah. Well, from my point of view, I think they've got very good value.
Thanks, Michael. Tell Philip.
Eight months after the first spade hit the ground, on a job that was meant to take 10 weeks, it's finally time to take a look at the end result.
It's so finished. There's a beautiful crispness about that I didn't expect. It just runs out into the distance so beautifully. And the grasses are really lovely. They're just waving away in the wind compared to the static nature of everything else. There's absolutely no sense of limited budget here. It feels restrained, there's no doubt about it, but that feels like a stylistic choice, and it was. So Philip and Maria wanted a low-maintenance garden. Now, I wouldn't call this low maintenance, but it's simple maintenance. It's very clear what needs to be done, and that's important. There is no horticultural demand here. There's nothing glamorous about any of the planting. There's nothing all that glamorous about any particular built form either. It's all very, very held back.
Hi, Michael.
Hey, Maria. Hey, Philip.
Michael, how are you?
Excellent, thank you. Good to see you.
You too.
You happy?
Very happy.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
Looks
it has.
amazing,
It does.
doesn't it?
It has come out really well.
It just feels to me so resolved.
Yeah.
It's instantly relaxing, don't you reckon?
It does.
The two smaller courtyards perfectly complement the larger space. The plant life is settling in beautifully, and the lake has returned to its former glory.
Is it what you imagined when you set out?
Everything and more. We're not gardeners and we don't have green kind of thumbs, so trying to imagine what it was going to be and to what we have now, I think that it's probably exceeded what we had hoped for.
It's turned out beautiful.
So you're not scared of the responsibility of it?
No, not as what we were at the beginning, but no, it's great. So a bit of water, yeah, and some help. Yeah.
Right. So last time we saw Christopher, he was very nervous about approaching you about a budget blowout. How did that conversation go?
Well, I tend to rant and rave a little bit when it comes to budgets. And then I got a chunk of bills in the short concession and I kind of thought, well, hang on.
Wait, we reached the top.
We're nearly there. But at the end, it was probably me just being a bit reactive.
Has he blown it?
Not really, no.
No, we're around that mark, 150 to 160, 165. We're in that mark. But no, I think we've come in pretty close.
Although slightly over the 150 budget, this is an impressive result, and one that's fully appreciated by Philip and Maria.
The most important thing that I've learned is that you need to have an understanding of landscapes to be able to create something that's beautiful. So I think that if you've got that talent, great. If you don't, well, then you need to kind of work with someone that does have that talent, and we have in Chris. We entrusted him with a lot of responsibility, and I think that he's delivered a great product, and we're really happy. Look, I think we're not loud and we like to fly below the radar, and I think the garden is very much along like our personalities, and Chris's too. He's subtle, and I think the garden's subtle.
But beautiful. It's a very relaxed setting. This is what the landscape is all about.
I think it'd be great for entertaining. You know, it kind of screams, use me, you know what I mean? Like, it has to be used, not just kind of a piece of grass to go lay on or walk across. It's a functional space. You know, we're already planning, Luca's his first birthday. The attachment is still not quite there yet, but I think that the attachment will come with building memories in the space.
This garden has been an exercise in modesty and restraint, both in its creation and its execution. And while its subtleties may not be for everyone, it's just right for this growing family.
Look at this tree, Luca.
Hey, here. Grab.
Yeah.
Good boy.
Beautiful, isn't it?
I think Christopher Owen has delivered the perfect garden for Philip and Maria. And while they were, by their own admission, somewhat disengaged, I think what we're seeing today is the birth of a whole new engagement with and a deeper, nurturing interaction with the great outdoors. Frankly, it's life-changing.
Come together well, hasn't it, Luca?
Yeah, like it.
Oh, yeah.
One with nature.
Maybe you'll be the first in the family. Is that what you think?